Hello, my friends. It's Monday, July 7th, 2025, and I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, your Red State refugee. And welcome to the Radical Russ Show, coming to you from Rolla J Studios in my undisclosed mountain hideaway in the beautiful state of Jefferson region of Southern Oregon. On this week's smoke session, Dictator Trump gets his Enabling Act through Congress as the fascist government opens the first domestic concentration camp. The ICE Gestapo will be larger than the Marines with 10 times more prison space than we have now. Texas floods killed dozens following the fascist dismantling of weather forecasting. The New York Times smears Zoran Mamdani in a racist hit piece. Elon Musk forms the America Party in a feud over the big beautiful bill and the Epstein List. Portland Muslims sue over mugshots. Idaho's Attorney General confirms that not everyone is welcome here, and a radical rant on fighting American fascism. Before we get to all that, though, just three quick hits here. And first of all, an update on the puppies. The puppies are now 7 weeks old, and they are absolute hellions. I tell you, every morning I wake up and it's just cleaning up puppy poop and trying to get them organized for eating their meals and running around. Oh, it's just so cute. They're now doing laps around the house as they chase each other. 5 little less than 2,000 gram puppies. Oh, it's just the cutest thing. And when I'm walking around the house too, they'll like attack my toes and bite my socks. And you can't even walk around the place without being attacked by them. So my nomenclature for a group of Chihuahuas is a chaos of Chihuahuas, and I think that is entirely appropriate. Well, as you know, my podcast has been a little spotty these last couple of weeks because I had to venture back to the state of my birth, the handmade state. That's right. I actually traversed into the state of Idaho this week. Had my 40th class reunion for the Nampa High School class of 1985. And while we were out there, Lady Love and I also did some cleaning out of our storage unit. A lot of stuff that we had stored over there, and some interesting articles we found dating back to some of our earliest marijuana activism. You can find them on my Blue Sky feed at radicalruss.com on Blue Sky. But I want to talk just a little bit about the 40th reunion because it's quite a thing to see all your old high school buddies 40 years later. And it is an amazing boost for self-esteem to show up there having been the fat guy in the group. And now I'm not. At my fattest, I weighed about 280 when I went to the 20-year reunion. And I was probably 250 when I went to the 30-year reunion. Now I'm down to about 220. So every time they see me, there's just less of me. I suppose by the 70th year reunion, I'll be 160 pounds. I'll be just a skin and bones walking around. But it was great to see so many of the folks. And Brent, one of my classmates, Brent, got to see him. He's in Hollywood working for Warner Brothers. He's like a set foreman. He does set decorations. He's talking about all the movies he's been working on, like the most recent one he worked on, Top Gun Maverick, which now that I heard that, I had to actually watch Top Gun Maverick, and I'm watching it, like looking at all the sets, like, oh, I wonder if he put that there. I wonder if he put that there. And he got to meet, Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer. And he also points out that Val Kilmer's voice in the movie had a lot of audio help. Apparently Val Kilmer's throat cancer was pretty bad at that point, and he could hardly even speak. And he also talked about finding all these interesting props that are in the back of the warehouse because apparently before the 21st century, Warner Brothers goes back to the 1900s, of course, early 1900s, and they have all these props in the warehouse that they don't have any ledger that tells you what's what, right? So they're always going back there on little adventures to find different props from early movies. And he was talking about how he found the prop from Casablanca, the desk and the chair that Bogey sat in, Rick's desk and chair from the movie Casablanca. And they find these interesting little things. So that was kind of cool to catch up with that. Also, he noticed my fingernails. As you all know, I paint my fingernails ever since the election. have to express myself in certain political ways. And one of those ways is one fingernail I paint in the colors of the Ukrainian flag, yellow on the bottom, blue on the top. And he noticed my nail and he goes, do you know I'm married to a Ukrainian woman? And I said, wow, that's great. And he said, Slava Ukraine. And so I said, yeah, Slava Ukraine. He goes, oh, no. No, the reply is Heroam Slava, which means save the heroes or joy, praise the heroes, something like that. So Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava. There you go. My friend Joe was there as well. One of my oldest friends, known him since 6th grade. We were in the Gifted and Talented program. Back then it was called DELVE, which is Developing Educational Learning Ventures. So yeah, that means I was the Belve in Delve. Anyway, Joe was the smartest kid in school. Like literally, like when we were in 6th grade, all the kids went to one school in 6th grade in Nampa at the time called Central School. And they give you the Iowa test of basic skills, this nationwide test. And I got like a 97 on the test, 97th percentile. And I'm like, wow, I think I got the highest score in the school. And somebody said, nope, some kid named Joe got a 99. And so that's how I met Joe, the smartest kid in Nampa, Idaho. And ironically, the two of us both being an honor student, honor society, super nerds that we were, both of us never got a college degree. Now, Joe did more with his not having a college degree. He went on to work for Micron Technology, became a really high level engineer in the company. I guess just recently he's had his fuck it, I quit moment and left Micron. He's working with some other company now. But yeah, he rose really, really high in information technology just by, learning it himself. We were literally self-taught, he and I. Our junior year, we spent the entire summer, like 6 days a week, going to the Northwest Nazarene College, which is now a university, Northwest Nazarene College computer lab, and we taught ourselves BASIC and Fortran from these big, thick manuals. And this was mainframe program, not even talking personal computers. This is like 1983. So obviously he did very, very well. I also found out that he's got a couple of his kids are trans. And so he had the whole adventure of having to learn what that's all about. It was great talking to him. He's like, yeah, I was a real shithead at first. I didn't know anything about it. I'm like, yeah. So we'll be discussing that topic more in the future. My friend Gretchen was there as well. Her dad was the computer prof at NNC. So that's how we were able to get into the computer labs there. And she was the smart girl in our group. And she's the only person in the class of 85 who's younger than I am by like 10 days. And she attended with her partner, Katie, which was the first moment that she was like officially out in public with our high school friends. She was always straight growing up. So that was kind of interesting to see everyone assimilating to that reality. Steve was there, my good friend Steve. He was in band with us. And the thing I'll always remember about Steve is I used to have this little blue bass guitar my dad gave me. Just a blue 4-string, an old thing. And I didn't think much of it. And he was going off to the Navy, and I said, hey, man, he wanted a bass. And I'll sell you my bass. And I ended up selling it to him for like $80. Well, it turns out this bass is like a 1964 Ventures Mosrite collector edition bass. Like it's worth thousands and thousands of dollars. And he still has it. He showed me the photo. He's got this great wall where he's got all his guitars hanging from the wall. And there it is, right in the center. My little blue Mosrite. That was one of the hardest lessons I ever had to learn. Who else was there? Oh, Farrell was there. Farrell was a trumpet player in the band, and he's married now to my ex-wife's best friend from junior high school. So, surprise. That was fun. Marty was back. It's so good to see Marty. I haven't seen him in a long time. And Marty's retired from whatever it is he did, for which he has a particular set of skills that have been executed on, I think, almost every continent. I don't think he's been to Antarctica, but yeah, so he's been doing like freedom fighter. Look, I've already said too much. Yeah, I've already said too much. I'm just glad Marty's in one piece and seemingly okay. Mike was there. Mike's had another successful exit from a company, making lots of money, apparently. Want to know what I was up to? I'm like, hey, I'm podcasting and, retired with my girl in the mountains. And then he said, yeah, but what are you doing to pay the rent? Oh, well, none of your damn business. My buddy Scott was there. He's a public school teacher, just devastated by what's going on with public schools. Also, he was on the cheerleading squad. We were both on the cheerleading squad. I was the first school mascot for Nampa High School, which was kind of interesting. We got this bulldog suit, right? And I'm like 6 foot tall. And there was another person who was also the bulldog. We'd alternate. And she was Marcy Swindell, and she was like 5'2". So the bulldog would like lose 10 inches of height every other game because it would be me and then her, then me and then her. Scott went on to do cheerleading in college. He became a cheerleading instructor. He was really good at this stuff. So we talked a little bit about cheerleading becoming an Olympic sport and how that's going to be interesting. Who else did we find there? Amy was there. Love seeing Amy. She's one of those positive, cheerful people, has been forever and ever. Erin showed up, and I had such a crush on Erin in high school. She was a sax player in the band. And I was timid and she was gorgeous. So I never asked her out or anything. She and her husband were there. She's still gorgeous, and talked a little bit about our shared love of the herb. So that was cool. Robert was there. Robert, the reason I cannot drink Yukon Jack to this day. He and I finished a bottle of it, skipping school one day. And that's all you need to know. Heidi was there. Heidi and a few other people were there. And, of course, growing up in Nampa, Idaho, it's a very conservative area. And so they let me know, because I've posted quite a bit about my being a marijuana legalizer and such. So they let me know, we completely support your right to fight for whatever you believe in, which is like, okay, there's kind of a big but implied there, big enough to attract Sir Mix-a-Lot, but okay, thanks for the compliment, I guess. One of them even said, yep, it would figure that you'd be a legalizer. Like, how would it figure? I never smoked pot in high school. I never smoked pot till I was 22 years old. I didn't even smoke pot in college. Like, I was pretty straight-laced aside from alcohol. Reed showed up from Hawaii. That was really cool. Brian, he's living in Cozumel, Mexico. He showed up, so they flew the farthest to get to our class reunion. Had a great discussion with Reed. He's out in Hawaii right now. Honolulu, I should say. We had a good discussion about the weed politics going on out there. And then my favorite get for the entire class reunion was running into Elisa. Elisa was one of the people who's actually kind of running the reunion. She was kind of MC of the thing. But Elisa was my junior prom date, and absolutely platonic. There's nothing crazy going on, but she was my junior prom date. So we have this picture, the two of us from junior prom. I'm in a white tux, and she's in a pink dress. And then at our 20-year reunion, I found her, and she had that picture. And so we took a picture of us recreating that picture. So there's a picture of the two of us 20 years ago holding the picture from 20 years before that. And then I caught up with her here for the 40th reunion, and on my tablet, I pulled up the picture of us holding the picture, and we held the tablet. So if you go onto my site, my Blue Sky at radicalrust.com, you'll find the 40-year fractal picture of us holding the 20-year picture of us holding the prom picture. It's my favorite get of the Nampa High School 40-year class reunion. In other Rust nostalgia happening over the past couple of weeks, July 1st, 2015 was the Burnside burn. So we just had the 10th anniversary of the Burnside burn. And what was that? Oh, well, let me tell you. On July 1st, 2015, Oregon legalization of marijuana went into effect at midnight. So that was the moment it became legal to possess marijuana. Now, it wasn't quite legal yet to sell it, but you could at least possess it. And what happened is at the time, I was the executive director of Portland Normal. We had started a new chapter just for the city of Portland. And as this event was coming up, as this moment of legalization was coming up, I had this idea that it would be cool to, at midnight, have a joint, smoke a joint on the Burnside Bridge, which is the main central bridge that connects the Portland main city to the eastern side, which is where, a lot of the people live. It's literally the east-west divider, or is it the north-south divider? Yeah, north-south divider of the town, and the river is the east-west. So this Burnside Bridge on the Portland City side of the river has the iconic white stag sign. It's this sign that's got the shape of the state of Oregon in neon. Says "Made in Oregon" in big letters in the center, and then has this white stag that lights up in the middle of it. The iconic symbol of the city of Portland. And I thought, hey, when marijuana becomes legal at midnight, I want a picture of me smoking a joint underneath the white stag sign. Well, this escalated into the point where I ended up getting interviewed on the local news about this, about legalization happening. And it was a general piece on, what does this mean? How much is being legalized? When will stores be legal, and so forth? So they wanted to interview the executive director of Portland Normal. That was me. And I said, yeah, I'm going to show up. I'm going to go to the Burnside Bridge, and I'm going to smoke a joint, and I'll share with anyone else who wants to smoke a joint with me. And according to the new law, we can share for no remuneration. You can't sell it, but you can share up to an ounce. So I'll bring an ounce and smoke with anyone who wants to smoke with me. Well, this kind of escalated. This is where we enter the activist named Pork Chop. There was this disabled fella in a wheelchair, missing part of one leg, I believe. He went by the name of Pork Chop. And we were talking to Pork Chop about this event. And he's like, yeah, I'll help people get this out here. He had a really raspy voice. I'll help you get people out there. And we gave him a megaphone and just told him, go around town and tell people that we're going to have a smoke out on the Burnside Bridge at midnight. So he did. He's driving around in his van. He's got his little bullhorn. He's just going around town. Well, as it turns out, Pork Chop embellished a little. Pork Chop took me saying that I was going to show up on my own with an ounce to share with people and turned that into Normal's going to have 420 pounds of weed on the Burnside Bridge to share with everyone, which, of course, we did not have. So I'm going about my day, getting ready. I figure, I'll start getting ready. And somebody calls me. Maybe it was Kalika who called me or texted me. I can't remember, but somewhere around 10:30, 11. Hey, have you seen what's happening on the bridge? I'm like, no, what's going on? It's packed, dude. And so we get out there about 11:15 or so. And like the entire sidewalk of the Burnside Bridge on one side is just packed with people, like hundreds and hundreds of people. And by the time midnight rolls around, we got about 5,000 people on that bridge. We had shut down traffic. Like the people were on the bridge itself, just packed, passing joints, passing bongs back and forth. I had my baggie I'd rolled out literally like 28 1-gram joints. So I had an ounce and I handed out 27 of them to other people. And it got a little crazy. People demanding to know where the 420 pounds of weed is. I don't know what you're talking about all this weed. I got mine. Ask other people if they got theirs. And as it happened, as it got later in the night, the crowd got a little rowdy, and one of the local medical dispensary guys ended up kind of marching them out. They were all like kind of gathering around his dispensary because it was in that sort of vicinity. And he ended up handing out a whole lot of weed to people just to mollify the crowd so there wasn't any sort of riot. So it was a little scary. It was a little exciting, but that's the story of the Burnside Burn, which then made news. Reuters covered it. Washington Post covered it. And I've posted the photo from the Burnside Burn on my Blue Sky account at radicalruss.com. If you want to check it out, you can see how many people were there. That was the 10th anniversary, the Burnside Burn, July 1st, 2025. If I had to do it all over again, I might not have given Pork Chop that megaphone. Well, our main story this week is the passage of the fascist dictator's Enabling Act, Trump's so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, which came through the Congress, and I have to admit, the Democrats did a pretty good job on this one, given their lack of power in the institution. They managed to get stripped out of this bill some of the horrible things that could have been kept, but overall, this thing is one big shit sandwich, and we're all about to take a bite. The Big Beautiful Bill, good Lord, I can't even... Why am I even calling it that? The Enabling Act from this fascist dictator. The biggest part of it is that it's going to be creating the secret police force, the ICE Gestapo, is now going to have a budget bigger than the United States Marine Corps. They're going to have a budget that's bigger than Italy's entire military, slightly lower than Canada's entire military, with more prison space, 10 times more prison space estimated than what we have in the entire federal, state, and local jail facilities in the United States currently. And remember, we lead the world in incarceration already. We already have more of our people behind bars than any other country per capita or overall. We have more prisoners. We have 22% of the world's incarceration. So-called land of the free. 1 out of 5 people in prisons lives here in the land of the free. So we got the Big Beautiful Bill that is going to massively increase ICE. We'll talk about that a little later in the next segment. We've also got this Enabling Act that's going to be destroying Medicaid, going to be slashing Medicaid, and talk about the cowardice of some of these senators and representatives. You had Josh Hawley from Missouri talking about, oh, this is a terrible bill. I don't support that it's going to slash Medicaid, and then goes and votes for it. You get Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, who could have stopped it. She was the deciding vote that could have stopped it in the Senate, who says, I don't agree with all the terrible stuff that's in it, but I'm going to vote for it and hope that when it gets to the House, they take those terrible things out. And they didn't. They approved it 218 to 214. Could have been 218 to 217, but 3 Democrats have died this year, so don't have those votes. Lisa Murkowski went and caved, and everyone knows that Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, they're always so concerned. They're so concerned about these terrible things the Republicans do, but it's like they got to deal with each other. Okay, Lisa, I'll take the hit this time. Oh no, Susan, I'll take the hit this time. There's always one of them that's just not concerned enough to stop the thing. So it gets through the House. Hakeem Jeffries, let's give him some credit for doing his magic minute speech and taking like 9 hours, setting another record for who can talk the longest before something terrible happens. And they want to try to paper over this slashing of Medicaid. They know this is a stinker. They're slashing Medicaid in order to make it balanced, to be able to give massive tax cuts to the wealthy, to make them a fraction richer than they already are, to sacrifice the health care of poor people, of children, of the disabled, so Jeff Bezos can get a bigger yacht. They're trying to paper over this. First of all, they set the Medicaid cuts, which again, the Congressional Budget Office says about 14 million people are going to lose health care because of this. They set these cuts to not take place until after the 2026 midterm election. They don't kick in until 2027. So they know this sucks, because they don't want to have to take the hit for it in the midterm elections, which I guess is a silver lining. At least that shows they don't think they have the midterm elections sewn up with all their gerrymandering and vote suppression and ICE intimidation at polling stations in urban areas. You know that's coming. They're going to claim, we're going to kick all the illegals off the voting rolls. We'll show you. We'll get all the illegals from voting. And basically, they'll just stop brown people from wanting to go to the polls for fear of being harassed by these armed, masked thugs. So they kicking people off the Medicaid after 2027, trying to lie their way out of this, and also counting on the ignorance of the American people. You remember how people were saying, well, I'm glad they're getting rid of Obamacare because I'm on the Affordable Care Act. I like the Affordable Care Act, but they got to get rid of this Obamacare. And we're all like, hey, dummy, you know those are the same thing, right? It's kind of the Democrats' fault in a sense. Like, Obamacare wasn't popular at first and it got attacked a lot, so they did everything they could to not say Obamacare and instead say the Affordable Care Act, and they did it so well that once Obamacare kicked in and became popular, people knew it as the Affordable Care Act, and Republicans could still demonize Obamacare. Well, we got kind of the same thing going on here with Medicaid. There's a lot of people on Medicaid all throughout the states who don't know they're on Medicaid because, again, the states go and rename it. Here in Oregon, it's called the Oregon Health Plan. In California, it's called Medi-Cal. And all these different states have these different names for their state health programs that are supplemented or funded by Medicaid. So we're going to have this same situation where people, I don't have to worry about them cuts to Medicaid. I'm on the Oregon Health Plan. And then 2027 will roll around. What happened to my Oregon Health Plan? What happened to my Medi-Cal? So maybe we ought to ask the states not to rename these things or give them just your state name. Call it Oregon Medicaid, California Medicaid, so that people who aren't, rabid consumers of the news can know what exactly it is that's being cut. But even with the cuts not kicking in until 2027, they know that even the threat, even the hint that this is going to kick 14 million people off their health care is bad for the midterms. So they sent out this guy. Passant is his name. He's with the president's National Economic Council. They put him on the Sunday talk shows to try to defend what's going on in the passage of this bill and its cuts to Medicaid. And first of all, this guy has an eminently punchable face. Metaphorically, don't go punch me in the face if you see him. I don't want to encourage violence. But he's the kind of guy that's that smarmy, smiling, oh gosh, gee whiz, how could anyone think such a thing? That's just silly. One of them kind of guys. Let me just play for you. This is a clip from him on one of the Sunday shows, I forget which, defending what the cuts will be to Medicaid.
What is your message to those legitimately on Medicaid who are worried about losing coverage?
We just stopped waste, fraud, and abuse. And honest to goodness, to think about all the good things that have happened in this bill that should be celebrated by everybody. So think about it. For every child born in America, we're putting $1,000 in their investment account right away. And we're doing that so that everybody will have a piece of the action of this big growing pie. And everything about the bill is helping middle class, lower class people, putting $10,000 into people's pockets. People are not going to go hungry. People are going to have earned success. They're going to have more jobs, more health insurance because they have more jobs, and more money in the bank because we're putting a bank account or setting up a bank account for every kid born in America. So this is not trickle down anything. This is bottom up growth, bottom up celebration.
First of all, do they got to interview the guy while the lawn mowing is going on at the White House? Is that the deal going on there? I don't know what the sound is, but the beginning and the end of that clip are the important parts. The beginning, first of all, this is from Fox, and the Fox interviewer, the way that he loads that question up. For those of the people that are legitimately on Medicare, what will you say to them? As if most Medicaid, as if most of the people, there's people on Medicaid that are, he's setting up the waste, fraud, and abuse line, right? So one of the things about them constantly saying that all they're doing is eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse is that someone's going to lose their health care from this. Guaranteed. And now they're being told that their loss of health care was because they are a waste, or they were committing fraud, or they were abusing the system. That's how they're setting this up. They're setting it up so, no. If you lost your health care, that's your fault. It's your fault you lost your health care, not our fault. We're just cutting the waste, fraud, and abuse. Everyone who's legitimately on Medicaid can stay on Medicaid. And then the end part, we said, this is not trickle down anything. Nobody had mentioned anything about trickling down. Interesting that you would let that slip. But all the stuff in the middle about setting a $1,000 account for your kid to grow and $10,000 in the pocket here, the little crumbs they're trying to put in front of you to make you notice that, hey, you get $1,000 in your kid account, but now you're spending $4,000 on your kid's health care because you lost your Medicaid. That's the distractions they are trying with this. Here's another one.
Another line of attack is rural health care. What about that component?
No, there's special funds to make sure that rural health care is taken care of. Again, their waste, fraud, and abuse is everywhere in Medicaid, not in Medicare. And the Medicaid waste, fraud, and abuse was negotiated by moderates in both the House and the Senate. And it's the kind of bill that has passed in the past with bipartisan support when they find abuse like this. And so nobody's going to lose their health insurance because of this.
Well, first of all, we've already seen a rural hospital closing in Nebraska, specifically noting that the reduction in Medicaid reimbursement funds is the reason why. Rural hospitals are going to close. What he's referring to is they're trying to set up some slush fund to make it so that the red states that they need to shore up for their electoral strategy will get some sort of bailout because of the Medicaid being cut. Like, well, just don't cut the Medicaid in the first place, idiot. And then to say, in the same breath, that we're cutting the waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid, there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid, and then close it with nobody's going to lose their health care coverage. Well, somebody is. Somebody that you think is wasting, defrauding, or abusing it is going to lose their health care coverage. He was on another one of the shows discussing the need for the work requirements in this bill.
So what we're doing is we're asking for a work requirement, but the work requirement is that you need to be looking for work or even doing volunteer work, and you don't need to do it until your kids are 14 or older. And so the idea that that's going to cause a massive hemorrhaging in availability of insurance doesn't make a lot of sense to us.
Andy Beshear and other Democrats have done a good job getting on the shows and pointing out that any sort of work requirement is really a paperwork requirement. Because first of all, a large proportion of the people that are on Medicaid are working. They are already working. Raises his hand behind the microphone. I'm on Medicaid. I'm on the Oregon Health Plan. I'm working 50 hours a week. And the other people that are getting sort of these Medicaid benefits are oftentimes caregivers, the only caregiver for their kid or their elderly parent, and they can't go to work, they can't take time away from that, or they're disabled people like my lady love who are physically incapable of doing any sort of work. So all you're doing is adding paperwork. And so him trying to wave this away by saying, well, it only kicks in if you have kids over 14. And it's not just you have to work, but you have to be looking for work or volunteering somewhere. Yes. And all those things require that you fill out a form. And there has to be someone to look over the form, and there's a possibility you don't get the form in on time, or you check something wrong on the form, or you didn't understand the form, and the next thing you know, you're without health care for the next 6 months to a year or longer as you try to work your way through some paperwork maze.
And then if you look at the CBO numbers, if you look at the big numbers, they say that people are going to lose insurance. About 5 million of those are people who have other insurance. They're people who have 2 types of insurance, and so therefore, if they lose one, they're still insured.
Oh, you silly people. You 5 million people worried about losing Medicaid when you already have another insurance, so you'll still be insured. So, gosh, did you stop to think why they had that Medicaid in the first place? That maybe the insurance that they have doesn't fully cover everything, and so the Medicaid covers other parts of it. And when they lose that Medicaid, whatever it was that the original insurance wouldn't cover is now not covered. In other words, 5 million people lose insurance coverage of some sort. Only have one insurance. These guys, and his little smirk, his little grin. Oh, you silly people worried. They've got you all, got your heads in a little tizzy, worried about losing your Medicaid that we're slashing the waste, fraud, and abuse of. But don't worry, you're not waste, fraud, and abuse, I'm sure.
Because the bottom line is the best way to get insurance is to get a job. And we've got a big, beautiful bill that's going to create a lot of job creation and a lot of insurance, and the CBO is just not accounting for that.
The last jobs number that came in showed a downturn of 33,000 jobs. They were expecting to add a couple 100,000. They lost 33,000 jobs in the last jobs report. The first time for what? I know Biden didn't lose any jobs. I think it's the first time since COVID that any jobs have been lost. And gosh, who was president back then? Oh, yeah. I remember. Their absolute disdain for the American people. And that last clip sums it up. The best way to get health insurance is to get a job. They don't think that if you're not, they think if you're not useful to capitalism, you don't deserve health care. If you're not contributing to the upward redistribution of wealth to the shareholders, to the CEOs, to the owners of this country, then you don't deserve to live. You deserve to suffer and die because you're not contributing to capitalism. Well, here's the sad, sad truth. Not everybody can work. No matter what we do, no matter how many classes we offer, no matter how many schools we open, no matter how many businesses we create, there will be people who are useless to capitalism. They will be unable to work, unwilling to work, not have the skills to work, be disabled, whatever it might be, mental illness, addiction. And it is the position of the MAGA party, the fascist party, that those people should die. They should not have health care. They haven't earned a living. So we've opened up our first domestic concentration camp in the United States of America, the so-called Alligator Alcatraz, which is an insult to both alligators and Alcatraz, because the people that were put in Alcatraz, the federal prison, were convicted of something. They had due process. They went before a court of law and were able to argue their case in front of a judge and or jury of their peers. This is not Alligator Alcatraz. This is Alligator Auschwitz. Actually, let me correct that. It's more like Alligator Dachau, because Dachau was the domestic concentration camp in Nazi Germany for which they actually announced the opening. But even the Nazis didn't go so far as to sell merchandise for it. The White House is literally selling merchandise for the so-called Alligator Alcatraz. How sick this country is. That there are people that are cheering this, that they are excited. Stephen Miller, certainly, excited at the prospect of rounding up brown people at the Home Depot, at the hotel, at the landscaping company, at the taco stand, rounding up the brown people and putting them into a concentration camp in the Florida Everglades, with the implied threat being that if they try to escape, they'll be eaten by alligators and pythons. They're celebrating this. Laura Loomer, the right-wing freak who handcuffed herself to Twitter that one time, who was flying around on Air Force One for quite a while and has the ear of the fascist dictator. Laura Loomer tweeted out about the Alligator Auschwitz that, quote, Alligator Lives Matter, and that soon they'd have 65 million meals. Well, that's strange. We don't have 65 million immigrants in this country. What could she be referring to? Oh, looky here. The U.S. Census indication of the total Latino population in the United States of America is about 65 million. They're not keeping it secret. They're not being sly or subtle about this. They're doing ethnic cleansing in this country. They want to round up all the brown people. They want to round them up and feed them to the alligators. This is not hyperbole. We've already told you how ICE now is going to have a budget bigger than the military of Italy, a little smaller than the military of Canada, bigger than the budget of the United States Marines, more officers than United States Marines. They are serious about this. And for some of the supporters on the MAGA side to be surprised about this, to feign shock that all of this is happening, let me give you the prime example of this. Joe Rogan on his podcast the other day talking about these ICE Gestapo kidnappings.
There's two things that are insane. One is the targeting of migrant workers, not cartel members, not gang members, not drug dealers, just construction workers showing up in construction sites and raiding them. Gardeners.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah, Joe, really? Like, when they were holding up all those signs at the convention that said mass deportations now, what, did you think they were only going to be targeting Boston? Mass deportations now? When they were talking about getting 20 million people out of the country, did you really think there were 20 million Tren de Agua gang members, MS-13 gang members in this country? They've not been secret about this. You willingly allowed yourself to believe when they were talking about the ICE and the deportations, you willingly allowed yourself to believe they were only going after the criminals and the gangbangers. But folks, let me tell you something. If you haven't been paying attention to the war on those people with those drugs, like I have over the past 20 years, you'd know that cops like easy targets. There was a reason why there were 800,000 marijuana arrests every year and so few cocaine and so few of those other arrests every year. Why? Because it was easier to go after the pot smokers. Easy to find the smell, and when you did catch them, they were pretty mellow, chilled out. They weren't amped up on amphetamines or PCP. They weren't likely to slash you or cut you or poke you with a needle or anything like that. Cops loved the easy pothead arrests. And that's what's going to happen with ICE here too, and is happening. Why are you going to spend your time getting your guys all armed up and ready to bust into some MS-13 gang house where they've got automatic weapons and body armor when you can go down to the Home Depot and round up a few short Mexican gardeners? It's a whole lot easier. And they've put quotas on this stuff. They want to get 3,000 people a day. So they're just grabbing people off of taco stands and grabbing people that are mowing lawns and continuing to do so unidentified, wearing these masks, not giving not showing any warrants, not giving any badge numbers. We've literally got a secret police force on our streets abducting American citizens, and the Supreme Court has decided they can be renditioned to countries they've never lived in before, to civil war zones, to places where they may be tortured or killed. It's all been given the green light. And you really think they're going to stop with just the immigrants? Any government bureaucratic institution that's given a budget and a mandate will fulfill that mandate and spend all their budget. And if there's not enough immigrants to fill those beds, they'll find people to fill those beds. You'll start to find all sorts of things that suddenly become reasons to suspect your loyalty to the United States, to denaturalize your citizenship. They're already doing it. They've already denaturalized a guy who was born on a military base, a guy who kind of like John McCain was born on a military base. They say he has no citizenship. They can just send him wherever. This is happening in the United States of America. We have become the fascists we always warned about. It's just crazy to me. It's like, think about the Obama years, and you remember all the right-wing freakouts about what Obama was going to do? The Jade Helm, they were going to organize this Jade Helm spying on Americans, that they were going to have Americans rounded up into camps, that they were going to implant tracking chips on everyone to see where they're going. Every right-wing freakout about what Obama was going to do, what George Soros was going to do, is happening now. And they're cheering it. RFK is talking about getting a wearable on everyone, like a smartwatch for all your health stuff, a tracker, so to speak. The government wants to put a tracker on you. And now these MAGA morons are like, yeah, make America healthy again. Put a tracker on me. Can I lick your boots a little more? ICE is out there kidnapping people. They kidnapped Julio Cesar Chavez, the Mexican boxer. They rounded him up the other day. And they're trying, these ICE guys, trying to engender some sympathy. Our brave ICE agents are facing a 417% increase in assaults, a 500% increase in assaults, a 600% increase in assaults. Have you noticed that this percent keeps going up, and it's such a huge percent? Well, I'll tell you another lesson that I learned from the drug war. And that is, when the government is trying to propagandize the increase of a certain number, and it's not really that big of an increase, there's all sorts of statistical tricks you can do to make it sound like a big increase. One example in my world is how they used to say, and they still do to some extent, they'll say, smoking marijuana will double your chance of a heart attack. Dun, dun, dun. Right. Like your chance of a heart attack, if you're a normal, healthy person, your chance of a heart attack is like 1 in a million. And if you smoke pot, your heart rate goes up a little bit, your blood pressure go down a little bit, and your heart attack risk jumps to 2 in a million. So, yeah, it doubled. Just like if you buy 2 quick pick lottery tickets, you've doubled your chances of winning the lottery. You went from 1 in 300 million to 2 in 300 million. Woohoo! That's one of the ways they make statistics lie to you, is they'll use a percentage to camouflage what is in actuality a tiny, tiny increase. And that's the case with these ICE assaults, because you want to know what the increase was? The increase went from 10 assaults to 60. Yeah, 10 assaults to 60 assaults. That's an increase of 600%. Sure, yes, that's true. But there are 21,800 ICE agents. Now, there's going to be 10 times that many in the future. There's 21,800 ICE agents now. So from the perspective of being an ICE agent, your chance of being assaulted went up from 0.045% to 0.275%. Yeah, from 0.045% to 0.275%. Not even a 1% chance that an ICE agent is going to be assaulted. And let's also question what they mean by assaulted, right? Is assaulted where the protester is standing in front of you and they're yelling and yelling and yelling, and some of their spittle flies off and hits the ICE agent, and that's an assault? Is an assault when they're standing close to the ICE agent and the ICE agent pushes forward and the person loses their balance, and so they kind of push back, and so now they've assaulted the ICE agent? Because I don't hear a whole lot about ICE agent injuries going up. Don't hear a whole lot about ICE agent hospitalizations going up, do we? And the way that this fascism is unfolding and being walked into our society by our legacy media institutions, being welcomed in some cases, it seems, is shocking to me. So the New York Times was reporting on this, these ICE holding facilities, and numerous times we've had Democratic lawmakers try to go to these ICE facilities to do tours. Now, the Republicans get in as soon as they want to go. Anytime they go down to CCOT down in El Salvador, they want to go to Alligator Auschwitz out there, they're welcomed with open arms. Come on in, Republicans. Take your thumbs up smiling picture next to our war crimes. They're all welcomed right in. Democrats try to show up and do some oversight, and DHS is turning them away. Now, understand, the federal law says that members of Congress can visit any of these facilities anytime they want. No announcement, no warning, surprise visit anytime. That's the federal law. DHS now is saying, no, you got to give us a week's notice. So the New York Times, when they wrote about this, in their headline, in their byline, I should say, they say that the Department of Homeland Security is requiring a 7-day notice that, quote, is at odds with federal law. Is at odds with is the exonerative tense way of saying breaks. It breaks federal law. They're breaking the law, New York Times. They're violating the law. It's not at odds with. There's not two sides here. DHS thinks it's the law, but the Congress doesn't. No, DHS is breaking the law. It's not your job to report that they say it's raining or not. It's your job to stick your head out the window and determine if that's so, New York Times. And the other part of this news that we got back, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who got returned from CCOT, the prison they said no one ever leaves. We could never get him back. Well, we can't bring him back. There's no way El Salvador couldn't send him back. Oh, they sent him back. Anyway, so he's got a lawsuit going that details what happened to him in that El Salvadoran gulag, the torture he was subjected to, sleep deprivation, food deprivation, pain torture where they're forced to kneel for 9 hours at a time. And if they fall out, they're beaten with sticks, all sorts of horrendous treatment that he's been getting. And the judge in Tennessee overseeing his case has actually delayed releasing Abrego Garcia. The judge is holding him in jail and specifically said he's doing so because he fears if he releases him, ICE will just pick him up and send him back for more torture. This is what we've become in the United States of America. And one more thing on this ICE, Alligator Auschwitz stuff. If you've got a shop out there at Etsy or you're buying anything on Etsy, I need you to stop that right now because Etsy is out there allowing the sales of this so-called Alligator Alcatraz merchandise, profiting from the despicable installations of concentration camps in this country. And I'm going to say concentration camps, plural, because that's exactly what Donald Trump has planned.
How many more facilities like this do you feel that the country needs in order to enact your agenda of mass deportations?
Well, I think we'd like to see them in many states, really, many states. This one, I know Ron's doing a second one, at least a second one, and probably a couple of more. And, you know, at some point they might morph into a system where you're going to keep it for a long time. You know,
He's not kidding, folks. They want to institute a system of concentration camps in this country. And I can bet most of the states where they'll be located, too, going to look a lot like the old Confederacy. And it's going to be the return of the plantation system as well, because we're already seeing talk about the prisoners in these concentration camps being lent out to planters, to farmers, to be able to pick the crops. Do you see how this is going to work, folks? We go round up all the brown immigrants who came to this country who would have picked those crops for pennies. We're going to round them up and put them into concentration camps and lend them out to the same damn farmers to pick the crops for free. Prison labor, slave labor. That's what this is all about. Reestablishing the Old South, reestablishing the plantation system, free labor. I keep seeing memes that go around on social media where it's a field and there's some migrant workers out in the field and saying, hey, MAGA, when they're all gone, you're welcome to come pick the crops in the field. You're welcome to make 50 cents a bushel for strawberries, whatever it is, right? I'm like, no, that's not something to be celebrating, folks, because it ain't going to be the MAGAs that puts there. It's going to be the people that resist this fascist regime. It's going to be people like you and me that speak out against this. Our speech, our dissent against this fascist government is going to be criminalized in the future. It's going to be considered un-American. It's going to be considered reason to doubt your citizenship, to denaturalize you, even if you are like me, born in this country from people 5-6 generations back who were born in this country. Hell, it won't matter if you're Comanche. They will denaturalize you and put you into those camps and lend you out to the farmers to pick the crops for free. Let's turn my attention to the Democrats in the United States of America, and kind of a tangential issue to that. I want to say something about these terrible floods that are happening in Texas. Of course, terrible loss of life, over 70 or 80 dead now that I've heard, and that terrible case of the girls at the summer camp being washed away. We're seeing pictures of first responders just weeping as they find these kids' bodies, in the mud, in the trees. It's just an awful, awful thing that's happened. And one of the side effects of this awful thing happening is some people on our side, on the democracy side, I should say, who are saying, well, that's what you voted for. Well, you voted red, Texas. You voted for MAGA. So the fact that they cut the National Weather Service and didn't predict the massive rainfall and you got the floods that washed people away, well, that's a tough luck. Ha ha, you voted for MAGA. Stop that shit. We are not them. We do not cheer the death of fellow Americans, especially the death of children. That's sick. This is not some partisan red-blue game here. These are Americans who died in this disaster. I hate when these kind of things happen and our side gets all, well, red people got what they voted for. Did you know more people in Texas voted for Kamala Harris than any other state but California? Yeah, like when we talk about these red states and blue states, very few of them are anywhere near like less than 40% blue. Even the most red MAGA, Idaho, Oklahoma type state has tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of democracy-loving Americans just like you and me. And similarly, many of these blue states have a whole bunch of redneck MAGA assholes too. I'm living around them right here in Southern Oregon. But nobody voted for their kid to be drowned. So stop that. Stop that type of memeing and discussion. These Americans are victims of our fascist dictatorship. And many of the people that voted for this fascist dictatorship did not vote for that with full knowledge of what it would be. They've been brainwashed and psyoped by 3 decades of Fox News and Rush Limbaugh and Facebook memes and Nextdoor posts, and they live in an entirely different information ecosystem where a lot of the stuff that you and I understand to be true just doesn't exist in their world. So start to have some compassion for these people as being bamboozled. Now, I know there are some that aren't bamboozled. There are some like the Stephen Millers and the hardcore, true, racist, MAGA, Aryan Nations, Ku Klux Klan assholes. Yes, they exist. But there's not a majority of them in that group either. There's a lot of misguided people out there that voted for this shit. So have some compassion, please. All right, let me talk about the other thing going on the Democratic side, which is the win by Zoran Mamdani in the New York City primary race for mayor. First of all, we found out after they tallied all the ranked choice voting that Mamdani won more first place votes than Cuomo got in all the votes, first round, second round, third round. When we added up all of Cuomo's first choice, second choice, third choice, all that, he still didn't touch Mamdani. So it's got the centrist New York Democratic liberal neoliberal establishment freaked out that this youngster's coming up who talks openly about democratic socialism. They don't know how to handle him. It's freaking them out. They've tried to attack him on this anti-Semitism angle. That somehow he's anti-Semitic because he won't condemn the phrase globalize the intifada, a phrase he's never said and never promoted. But someone else has said it and he won't condemn it directly, so somehow he hates Jewish people. Well, they've tried this one. It's not really taken root because he has so much support amongst Jewish New Yorkers. I mean, Brad Lander, the comptroller, cross-endorsed him. A proud Jewish New Yorker cross-endorsed him. And voters under 40 don't automatically link Israel and Judaism anymore. They can have a negative opinion of Israel and its policies of genocide and ethnic cleansing without having an anti-Semitic view of Jewish people in general. That's something that the lobbyists for Israel and the general apologists for Israel have done a really good job over the years, is trying to conflate those two things. That if you criticize Israel, you're anti-Semitic. And people under 40 aren't buying that anymore. And that's got them freaked out. So this stuff wasn't working on Mamdani, so they found another thing. And the New York Times is in the middle of a big scandal here. The New York Times went and ran this piece where they found a guy who had gotten a hold of hacked information from Columbia University, from tons of students. And they sifted through all this information to find the information for Zoran Mamdani when he applied to go to Columbia, where his dad was actually faculty. And when he applied to Columbia University, there's the part where you check, your race. They got race and ethnicity, and you fill out your different boxes, right? So he, picks that he's Indian, South Asian, check. But there is also a box on there for African American. And he checked that as well, because the guy was born in Uganda. Well, that's pretty Africa. So if you're born in Africa and you're an American, then aren't you an African American? Well, the New York Times tries to blow this up, quoting this guy who they let remain anonymous as a so-called academic. And they make this big claim, this big case that Zoran Mamdani tried to apply to Columbia University and indicated that he was African American. And they're trying to make it like this stolen valor thing, like he stole a black identity because that could help him with the affirmative action to get into Columbia that would help him out. And so he was there. See? Aha! This big gotcha moment, which is an interesting kind of gotcha because he didn't actually end up getting into Columbia. So even if he was trying to claim black for some sort of advantage, it didn't work. And never mind the fact that that's all bullshit anyway, right? That's some sort of help. So they're all freaking out, and Mamdani's come back pretty clean and clear about this. Like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm a complex guy. I'm South Asian, yeah, obviously, but I was born in Uganda, and I didn't have a place to check Ugandan-Indian, so I checked African American. It's obviously a nothing burger. There's no big deal here. There's nothing to see here. But the real scandal here is that the anonymous guy that they were trying to keep hidden, who brought this whole thing up in the first place, who got the hacked information from Columbia, is a noted peddler of race science. It's this racist bastard out there who is purposely publishing this stuff to try to discredit Mamdani. And now it has come out that the New York Times went ahead and did this, published this guy, promoted the views of this discredited race hack, did so in order to avoid being scooped by Christopher Rufo. Christopher Rufo, the very notorious right-wing thinker who was behind the anti-CRT, critical race theory, and the anti-DEI, all that stuff. So yeah, another racist. They didn't want us to get scooped by another racist. We better get our racism out quick before we get scooped by another racist. The New York Times, how far it has fallen. So the New York Times, very concerned about the anti-Semitism with Zoran Mamdani won't globalize the Intifada, and very concerned about racism here. Might have picked African American on a form. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was out the other day. He gave a speech talking about banks and banking, and along the line talked about how some of the bankers were Shylocks. Now, this was kind of new to me because I grew up in Idaho, and we don't really have Jews in Idaho. Okay, there's probably some. 1,000 maybe, but it was like I didn't grow up with a knowledge of Jews and Jewish traditions and culture and all of that stuff. So Shylock was kind of lost on me. I mean, I kind of remember it from Shakespeare. Isn't it a Shakespeare thing? But no, Shylock is a very anti-Semitic trope. It's a very anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic trope. So, of course, the New York Times put that right above the fold on page 1 that Trump used this anti-Semitic language, right? Because they're so upset about, you know where this is going. Of course they didn't. Not a peep. No reporting at all that the president of the United States is openly using anti-Semitic slurs. Amazing to me. Just amazing. The feud between Elon Musk and Donald Trump is back on again with the passage of the Fascist Dictators Enabling Act that adds another, what is it, 5 trillion to the debt? 4 trillion? 4 or 5 trillion. What's the difference? But apparently Musk is really upset about that, basically pointing out what was the point of having DOGE, the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, if we're just going to add $5 trillion to the debt anyway. He's now some big, huge debt hawk. It also may have to do with the fact that this new enabling act of the fascist dictators takes away the EV credits and punishes electric vehicle manufacturing and solar power and wind power, basically all the electric environmental stuff that Elon Musk was in favor of. So he's very upset. He's also upset about this Epstein list. We got the news today. So that was one of the big things with the MAGAs, right? Oh, Joe Biden's hiding the Epstein list. They don't want to release the Epstein list. All these Democrats are on the Epstein list. These Democratic pedophiles that have this secret pedophile shop in the basement of a pizza parlor that doesn't have a basement. Yeah, that whole thing. So, QAnon, all the Democratic pedophile things. So they've been chomping at the bit to get their hands on the Epstein files. You got to show us the Epstein files. And so Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, back in February, says, we've got the Epstein client list. I've got it on my desk. We're going through the Epstein client list as we speak. Well, today or yesterday, one of these days, Pam Bondi came out and said, well, turns out there is no Epstein client list. Yeah, there's no Epstein client list. There's no evidence that he was blackmailing anybody for anything. And yeah, no client list, no blackmail list, nothing to see here. Yeah. And so the MAGAs, some of the hardcore MAGAs are pretty pissed about this. And of course, Musk has been posting on, the fact that Trump is all over that Epstein list situation. Oh, and also no evidence that Epstein was killed. It was just a suicide. Nothing to see here. All that worry that we had about Q and the Democrats and nope, nobody. Apparently, Ghislaine Maxwell is doing 20 years in federal prison for sex trafficking people to nobody. Apparently, nothing happened, nothing to see here. So this is causing a huge rift, so huge that Elon Musk has decided now that he is going to form a third political party. He actually posted this and had a line that was something like, we've tried red, we've tried blue, now it's time for the America Party. Oh, so if we don't have red, we don't have blue, then your party must be the white party? Is that? Yeah, that works out. Yeah, that fits. The white party, sure. So he's creating the America Party. And the other funny thing is its account name on Twitter is America Party X, which kind of evokes that 1998 movie that Edward Norton was so great in, American History X, the story of that Nazi. So America Party X, yeah. Good branding there, Elon. Way to go. And his claim is that this America Party is just going to target, 8 or 10 House races and a couple of Senate races. And try to flip the balance in those races with his people so that they have enough of a vote to stall or move different bills in Congress. So, okay, sure. Going to create an America Party. And as he talks about this, he says, we got to create the America Party because the two parties are so polarized. The blue party is far too left and the red party is far too right. We need someone that's not so polarizing. So we'll have the America Party in the middle. And then the other reason he gives is that the Democrats and the Republicans are a part of the uniparty that does nothing but explode the budget deficit. So we have to have a new party because the two parties are so completely opposite and polarized, but they're also both the same party. Because, you know, Elon Musk, he's a genius political thinker here. Also on the Republican ledger this week, I want to give a shout out to a Wisconsin Republican named Derrick Van Orden. Derrick Van Orden had a couple of tweets that were pretty funny. One of them came out apparently in a interview talking with somebody. He says, with regards to the big, beautiful bill and how they were all lining up behind it, he said, quote, "The president of the United States didn't give us an assignment. We're not a bunch of little bitches around here, okay?" Once again, don't think of an elephant. Nobody said you were a bunch of little bitches, but now that you mention it, yeah, I think maybe you are, because you all fell in line behind it. And then when somebody tweeted out about this Enabling Act, how it was going to cut 14 million people off of Medicaid and it's going to cut this and cut that and hurt people, he quote tweeted it and added the word yes in all caps with an exclamation mark, which he very shortly after deleted because it was pretty offensive. So yeah, shout out to that Republican on being a little bitch. Got a story coming out of my home state of Oregon that is gonna be a little controversial, and I might get in trouble for this one, but I gotta say it anyway. So there were some protests going on, as there are in Portland, Oregon, against ICE, and there were these two protesters, and they were wearing masks, and they laid down in front of a float in a parade and caused just doing a civil disobedience, right? And they were arrested, impeding traffic or trespassing, whatever it was, right? But these two mask-wearing protesters were then brought into the sheriff's office where they had to be mugshotted. So the sheriff made them take off their masks so that they could take the mugshot pictures of these two protesters who'd been accused of a crime. Well, now those protesters are suing the sheriff's office for forcing them to take off their masks for their mugshot. And the reason why is because they call their masks hijab. Yeah, this is a religious lawsuit. It has to do with these two Muslim women. These two Muslim women that were arrested at the protest had to go in, got arrested, get fingerprint, get booked, and then they had to get their mugshots taken, and the sheriff forced them to take off their hijab to get their mugshots taken. So, this is where it's going to get a little dicey here, is how much do we respect someone's freedom of religion in this sort of circumstance? Because the purpose of a mugshot is to be able to identify someone, isn't it? If someone is taking a mugshot and the only thing I can see are their eyes, what is the use of the mugshot? Now, of course, the Council on American Islamic Relations, filing suit for these two women, are saying that protecting Muslim women doesn't require complex policies or major resources. It simply requires basic respect. A private room, a female officer, and simply allowing them to wear their hijabs in the photo would have prevented this entirely. The law demands better, and so should we, end quote. Okay, look, that Muslim women have a religious belief that they cannot, they must be modest, and they cannot show their face in mixed sex company, not at home. right? In public, in mixed sex company, they cannot be showing their face, right? And so that's their religious belief. And we're supposed to respect that religious belief. And I can respect it to the point of, yes, let's have a female officer in a private room taking their mugshot. But the idea that they would have their mugshot taken with the hijab on makes no sense to me whatsoever. The mugshot is a picture. So the woman would not be in a mixed sex room with someone with her face uncovered. It's a picture. If we can accommodate taking the picture in a private room with a female officer, I think that's enough accommodation. But the lawsuit goes on to say that, where is this? Their driver's licenses and passports depict them wearing hijabs, and other jails and prisons allow Muslim women to wear hijabs while in custody, including in booking photographs, according to the suit. But I don't understand that. I don't understand the idea of a driver's license. Again, a piece of identification for me to be able to see that you are the person that is providing that identification. If all I can see are your eyes, I can't legitimately identify you. I've worked in many situations where I've had to card people for marijuana or for alcohol. And the law is on the person who cards the person. If I'm carding someone and I accept their fake ID or their misrepresented ID and I give them alcohol or marijuana, I'm on the hook for that. I could lose my marijuana handler's license, my bartender job, whatever. So you're going to expect people who are checking IDs to look at the woman there in front of them with the hijab who's got the pretty brown eyes, and then look down at the license at another woman in a hijab with pretty brown eyes and be able to positively identify that that's the right person? It doesn't seem right to me. I'm willing to respect people's right to freedom of religion, but in some circumstances, it seems like we're expecting society to sacrifice something integral, in this case, the ability to identify people, for someone's religious belief. And at a time when we're complaining about ICE agents being masked and unidentifiable, it seems a bit hypocritical for us to say, oh, it's okay if it's someone on our side protesting ICE. They can wear masks all the time. So I know you might disagree with this. You might think I'm off base on this. And like I said, I'm willing to allow for take the photo in a private room with a female officer. But let's also point out that the sheriffs in this case were kind of assholes about this in the first place anyway. According to the suit, it says after she was forced to remove her hijab in custody, a deputy then offered her a ham sandwich for lunch, which of course violates halal and their religion's forbidding of pork. Right? So Multnomah County didn't handle that very well either. But bottom line, when it comes to IDs, passports, mugshots, I think the needs of the law and identification outweigh the personal religious right to think you can't be photographed for identification. Country Baseline means it's time for our Boycott Idaho segment, where I remind you of the now 72 reasons you should avoid the handmade state. Boycott Idaho. Don't send your money to the handmade state. And if you can, boycott the potato. The Idaho potato. No red state is more singularly associated with one product than Idaho and the potato. They even brag about it on their license plates. So today in the Boycott Idaho segment, we've got kind of an update on a story that we covered for you before. You might recall the story of that teacher who put up the poster for the last 4 years that reads, "Everyone is welcome here." They put that up in her classroom. Everyone is welcome here. And then she was told by the school district that her poster was in violation of a new law, House Bill 41, which went into effect July 1st. And that law prohibits banners that, quote, promote political, religious, or ideological viewpoints, end quote. That's right. Everyone is welcome here promotes a political, religious, or ideological viewpoint. So the alleged purpose of this bill, House Bill 41, is to, quote, maintain a neutral and inclusive environment for all students, end quote, which seems to be what this banner does. So earlier in this year, when they pressed the school district about the banner, the school district said that it wasn't the message that was the problem. The message, everyone is welcome here, that's not the problem. It's the graphics. The local news station, KTVB, uncovered internal emails that revealed the problem was, quote, additional graphics that were on the bubble, but ultimately determined to have crossed the line of being potentially political, end quote. So what are these offensive, potentially political graphics we're talking about? They were a set of raised hands of black, brown, and white skin tones that had a little heart in the center of their palms. 10 hands raised up, black, brown, and white. Apparently, they felt that the part of HB 41 that bans flags or banners that represent political, religious, or ideological views, including but not limited to political parties, race, gender, sexual orientation, or political ideologies, applies to welcoming minority students. The fact that the arms are of different skin tones and the message, everyone is welcome here, combined, that violates the House Bill 41 for promoting a politically ideological viewpoint. So that was the setup. That's where everything stood until July 1st, when the law went into effect and the Attorney General Raul Labrador confirmed that the sign that declares black, brown, and white kids are all welcome in Idaho's schools violates the law. His guidance declares any sign is illegal that could, quote, show opinions, emotions, beliefs, or thoughts about politics, economics, society, faith, or religion. They're saying in school, you can't have any poster up that discusses politics, economics, society, faith, or religion with any sort of opinion, emotion, belief, or thought. What are we teaching these kids anyway? And so, with this standard in mind, the Attorney General then goes back in time to try to retcon the reason for banning the sign. Retcon is a retroactive continuity. It means in screenwriting to go back and make something fit the timeline. So he tried to do this. He tried to make it so that this woman putting up everyone is welcome here with black, brown, and white hands was somehow a political statement. So he starts by saying that everyone is welcome here started as a political statement back in 2016. Back in 2016, when Trump was elected, this school in Minneapolis, I believe, put up these signs all around their school that said, all are welcome here. Slightly different. All are welcome here after Trump was elected in 2016. So, obviously, that's a political statement. Trump gets elected and they put up all are welcome here. Well, that's a political statement, which is kind of funny that Idaho Republicans would think welcoming everybody of every race is an anti-Trump political statement, but I kind of see the logic. Of course, the Attorney General completely forgets the part where that Minneapolis school put all are welcome here signs up because after Trump's election, the racist MAGA assholes in the school graffitied the whole school with Trump won, you're getting deported, N-words suck, that kind of stuff. All over the school. So the school put up all are welcome here, not in response to Trump being elected, but in response to the racist graffiti that went up after Trump was elected, so that they could tell their students affected by that graffiti that that's not what we're really about. You are welcome here in this school. So it had nothing to do with Trump per se. It wasn't a political statement against Trump per se. It was a statement welcoming the kids who had just been assaulted by this racist graffiti. Then the Attorney General tries to make it even more political by saying the Idaho Democratic Party is selling versions of the "everyone is welcome here" sign. So that makes it political because the Democrats are selling it. Well, that's true. Democrats are selling the sign, but they didn't start selling it until after the school district said she couldn't keep it up because it violated the law. So it was the Republicans who made it a political statement by trying to ban it. Had it not been banned, this would never have come up in the first place, and Democrats wouldn't know to have sold that sign. And then the Attorney General concludes his case in the court of public opinion by noting that the teacher put those signs up shortly after the Minnesota school did back in 2017. And she confirmed in the media that she did so to share her personal ideological beliefs. Well, let's not let the facts get in the way of a good story, because she wasn't even a teacher in 2017. She couldn't have put the sign up after the Trump thing in Minneapolis. She wasn't a teacher then. She didn't put the sign up until 2021, 4 whole years after the thing, when guess who was president then? Joe Biden. And she had never even heard about the Minneapolis All Are Welcome Here story until KTVB got in touch with her on July 1st, asking her about the Attorney General's decision. And as far as a teacher having a personal ideology that kids of all races should be welcome in her classroom, that's the kind of personal ideology we want teachers to have. Like that little recitation we make them do every day. That's a pledge that's dedicated to liberty and justice for all. So, Attorney General Raul Labrador has a message for everyone in the United States. Not everyone is welcome there. Avoid the handmaid state. This Friday was our nation's Independence Day, the 249th birthday of the Declaration of Independence, and I'm sure many of you, like me, did not feel very celebratory. I did take the time to reread the Declaration. It's something you ought to do. Go check out the Declaration of Independence, and in reading all of the indictments against King George III that our forefathers laid out as the reason they were compelled to fight for independence, you reread those reasons today, and a lot of them apply today. Putting up a standing army amongst us that's not answerable to our legislatures, well, that's the ICE Gestapo. Sending us abroad for fake trials, constant being imprisoned abroad. A lot of these things in the Declaration are things that King Trump is doing right now. So I'd encourage you to reread that. And as I was going through the 4th of July, I was trying to think about, what I could say to maybe give us some positive momentum, to think about the place we are in history right now. And as I was scrolling through my social media feed, I found a post by a woman. I'm not going to name her because maybe she doesn't want me reading this or be associated. I don't know. It's in public, so I'm going to read it. And maybe I'll get sued. I don't know. But it's such a good post that I wanted to share it with you. And it's a woman who's a gamer. And so she was talking about Star Wars gaming. But then she also brought this point up about her grandpa. And it goes like this. My grandpa's parents fled Germany right at the outset of World War II. They fled because, frankly, they didn't want to be a part of what was going on there. And from what I understand, I had a relative who was an early victim of Nazi persecution of sexual deviance. So they left. My grandpa was a teen, and when he was old enough, he joined the Air Force. He wanted nothing more than to go after the people that forced our family from their homeland. I don't know all the specifics, but he had a lot of medals. He used to tell me, this one was 20 Nazis. Grandpa helped raise me, My grandparents' trailer was a place I'd go to escape my parents' constant fighting, but by the time I was able to talk with him, he was bedridden. So I stayed for weeks at a time with him watching TV shows. His absolute later favorite was Wings. One time he was flipping through channels. He was looking for wrestling, which is hillbilly for wrestling. But he stopped briefly on a show set in a war zone trench. He saw one character, made a spitting noise, and turned the channel. I asked him what it was. Hogan's Heroes, he sneered. When he got like that, I didn't push much. But I looked through the TV guide, remember those? And read about Hogan's Heroes. It was a World War II comedy where bumbling Nazis kept getting foiled by the clever corn-fed Americans. Why wouldn't he love that? So I brought it to him. I asked him the next day. Instead of explaining, he put on an episode. I watched every second. I thought it was fairly funny, but also pretty basic, clown humor. To me, that would have appealed to Grandpa. He loved Monty Python. He adored Blackadder. But he sneered. We talked. We discussed Colonel Clank and the other Nazis primarily. We talked about the silly buffoonery, the plans cursed to fail at the last minute every time. He asked if I knew what Nazis were. I said yes. After all, he mentioned it before, and I've seen movies. Nazis. Then he showed me his photo album. Not the family photo album. His. He showed me photos from his time in the Air Force. He showed me, maybe 7 years old, what a bomb does to a human body. He showed me the victims of cyanide poisoning. He showed me his compatriots with fourth-degree burns. This, he said, this is what Nazis are like. This is what Nazis do. And there's only one way you can stop a Nazi. And it's not tricking them into painting graffiti while you sneak into their base. You stop a Nazi by killing it. He said it. I'll never forget the tone he used. He went on to tell me that he's terrified that people are going to take the wrong lesson about the Nazis. He said, the only lesson we need is that when you see Nazis popping up, you crush them before you have a country full of them. What you don't do is treat them like jokes. He said that with their silly uniforms and beer guts and comical hats and accents, it's easy to underestimate them. Real Nazis aren't joking around, and they will kill you if they think for a second they can get away with it. He said he's afraid America's going to laugh itself into fascism. To wit, when actual fascists pop up now, the very common refrain is, it's not fair to call them Nazis because we have a very clear idea in our head of what a Nazi looks like. It looks like Indiana Jones villains, like Colonel Clank. Real Nazis wear suits. They own businesses. They're civil, on paper. Problem with Nazis, he said, is that once you have a Nazi infestation, it's too late. Most people will tell you these guys don't look like the Nazis. He told me that's the problem with Star Wars. It's about space Nazis, but it's too chicken shit to make them look like real Nazis. He told me that when fascism comes to America, people will be too busy watching out for Darth Vader. They're going to miss out on the next Adolf Hitler. That stuck with me. Was maybe one of my most formative lessons. What an amazing post from this woman. And I've shared it up on my Blue Sky feed. It'll also be in my show notes if you'd like to thank her directly. But what an amazing point. You stamp out Nazis. And that leads me to what I wanted to say about this entire situation. Is that we've been through this before. This is the streak of fascism that has always been in this country. From the Royalists in the 18th century, who supported the British Crown, to the Confederates in the 19th century, who tried to split this country apart to keep owning people, to the Ku Klux Klan and the Nazi sympathizers in the 20th century, who engaged in right-wing terrorism, blowing up churches, cross burnings, lynchings, and now the MAGAs in the 21st century. They're all the same. It's the same strain of anti-freedom, anti-multiculturalism that has existed in this country since its founding, since the 1600s even, going back to colonial times. And our ancestors have fought greater forces with less material, with less support than what we have now. We have the internet. We can instantly and secretly communicate with each other. We can build mutual aid networks. We have ways of raising money and material now online that we didn't have before. We've got access to information that we didn't have before. But like that post says, like that grandpa said, when you see Nazis, you've got to stomp them out. And that has been our mistake throughout these centuries. We did not stomp out the royalists. We did not kick them out of this new country that we formed. Part of it's racism. Part of it's because, oh, well, they're white like us. They're our brothers and sisters. They're our family. We've got to make up. Got to let bygones be bygones, put the past behind us. Same thing happened with the Confederates. These people committed treason to try to destroy our country. And afterwards, we let them live. That we didn't hang every Confederate general, hang every Confederate lawmaker, and disenfranchise every Confederate soldier for life is why we're in the situation we're in now. Because our side, the side of multiculturalism, the side of democracy, the side of freedom and liberty, we're just a little too compassionate sometimes. We're just too ready to think that we've won the battle. It's all over. The Civil War's over. We're doing Reconstruction. Everything's fine now. And we let those Nazis survive. We let those Confederates survive. We let them fester. We let them hold electoral office. We let them hold power. To the point where 12 years into Reconstruction, the entire effort is scuttled, the troops removed, and the South is building Jim Crow. And the Nazis continue to proliferate. The Klan becomes larger and larger. The Nazi sympathizers become larger and larger. We go to war in World War II. We defeat the Nazis. We defeat fascism. But we let the Klan still exist. All those Nazi sympathizers, they're allowed to continue to vote, hold power, and hold office. Because we're not serious. We're not serious about stamping out the Nazi. No matter what name you give it, it's the same sort of disorder. It's the basic lack of human empathy. It's the belief that somebody is inferior to you, that there is a natural hierarchy of which you, naturally, are upon the top of. That's what these MAGAs are all about. And this time, when we fight these MAGAs, it's time to stamp out the Nazis afterwards. The next Democratic politician that wants to get my vote in 2026 and 2028, of all their policies, I really only need to hear one thing. Lock them up. I want scorched earth, highly partisan, witch hunt style, go after every one of them. You know they do that witch hunt stuff and they're saying it's all partisan and political. They do that on purpose. They do that on purpose to change the perspective that, oh, well, we can't do any sort of prosecutions of the other side or else it'll be seen political. Well, when a politician commits a crime, it's going to be political. That's the very definition of politics. Democrats, stop being afraid of your own shadow. Stop being afraid of what the Republicans might do if you wielded power. Because guess what? They're going to do it anyway, whether you wield power or not. I heard during the Biden administration, oh, we dare not expand the court. We dare not expand the court because then it'll ruin the legitimacy of the court. And then the Republicans, when they get in power, they'll expand it again and blah, blah, blah. And again, we take something that should have been done, something that could have easily been defended since the Republican shenanigans of denying Barack Obama his appointment, and the fact that the next two appointments were made by a man who didn't win the popular vote and only became elected through documented and convicted fraud. So people forget that about the Stormy Daniels case and the 34 felony counts that he got was fraud he was using. He was defrauding the American people so he could win an election. He committed fraud to win an election. His 3 Supreme Court seats are illegitimate. And we could have defended expanding the court to 13 by saying we're replacing the 3, we're covering the 3 illegitimate ones, and we're giving a 4th one to Joe Biden. But no, afraid, it's so institutionalist, so afraid of rocking the boat, so afraid of upsetting the status quo, the establishment Democrats are, that now we have a SCROTUS, Supreme Court Republicans of the United States, a 6-3 SCROTUS that is legalizing extraordinary rendition, stuff that, the George Bush administration wishes could have been legalized. Democrats need to start to fight. And it's my hope that the rise of Zoran Mamdani and these under 40-year-old Democrats who have no knowledge, no personal feel for the Democrats getting their asses kicked in the 80s, which I believe is the problem with these older Democrats like Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, these types, is they still have in their DNA the shock of being in the wilderness for 12 years during the Reagan-Bush administrations, losing 49 states to 1 in the elections. They still have that trauma they can't get past. And they don't recognize that what Americans are looking for right now are Democrats who will fight. I saw someone post on Blue Sky said the great Democratic attack line for the primaries would be, wouldn't you like to fight these bastards for real? That's what we need from Democrats. More fight. Well, folks, that's all the time we've got for this week's Smoke Session. The Radical Russ Show is produced, directed, researched, written, recited, posted, and catered by me, Radical Russ Belville, and governed by Creative Commons share-alike licensing. News clips and social media posts are reproduced under fair use copyright laws for commentary and analysis. My main theme is We Love the Herb by Herbal Nation. And interstitial music is by me and my drum machine. Which brings me to our post-credits scene. First of all, happy 85th birthday to Ringo Starr today. 85 years old. Ringo's 85, and Paul, I think, is 83. He recently had his birthday, and I guess my money's on Ringo to be the last living Beatle. I don't know. I just got this feeling that Ringo's going to be the last one alive. Let's hope it's for, another decade or more. I'd love to see them both live into their 90s and others in their 90s. Oh my gosh, William Shatner and Mel Brooks had his 99th birthday. And Dick Van Dyke's coming up on 99. And Carol Burnett's like 92, 93, something like that. So many beloved celebrities. Willie Nelson turning, I think he is 94-ish, something like that. I don't remember exactly. Gosh, I sure hope they continue to live healthy and productive lives. Also, need to say goodbye to a couple people. First of all, goodbye to Mr. Blonde from Reservoir Dogs, Michael Madsen, the actor who was also in so many other great movies. And it's so sad because now we're not ever going to get that prequel movie that we wanted of the Vega brothers. As in Reservoir Dogs, he's the brother, the character he plays, Mr. Blonde, is the brother of the character that John Travolta plays in Pulp Fiction. They're the Vega brothers. There was supposed to be a prequels movie shot for the two of them. Never happened, and now it never will. Also, a goodbye and good riddance to the televangelist Jimmy Swaggart, who died after a massive heart attack at the age of 90. My condolences and thoughts and prayers go out to the medical teams that had no ethical choice but to have to treat him for a few days. I hope you're enjoying the seat in hell, Jimmy Swaggart. And we also got the verdict. Apparently there was a trial. Did you hear about this? It wasn't much in the news, was it? Some trial about this guy named Sean Puffy Puff Daddy P Diddy Combs. Yeah, apparently he's busted for trafficking people across state lines for prostitution, the Mann Act, but found not guilty, acquitted of 3 different charges having to do with RICO for continuing criminal enterprise in that same situation, because apparently the women who testified how he regularly beat them and blackmailed them with videos of them having outrageous sex and forced them to have sex with these male prostitutes for his enjoyment over a period of years. Apparently, that was all consensual. It was all consensual, so he wasn't part of a continuing criminal enterprise RICO act there. Because apparently the jurors have no freaking idea how abuse works and how women get trapped in these cycles of abuse. That, allegedly consensual because they're scared to death of the man killing them or blackmailing them with revenge porn. It's a disgusting verdict. And the only thing more disgusting about the verdict is how, for the 3 days after it, ABC News and some of the other outlets are promoting the story, continuing to tell the story. Let's have an interview with the panel of consultants to talk about the story. The guy was convicted of a couple crimes, acquitted of 3 others. That's it. You were done on the first day. Meanwhile, they're passing a bill that's going to take health care away from Americans and create ICE Gestapo camps throughout the country. And you had to scuttle airtime for that to put on this Puff P Diddy pimp shit. Anyway, you can contact me by email at radicalruss@gmail.com. Call my message line at 877-RUSS-420. That's 877-877-420. And reach me on social media as Blue Sky, as radicalruss.com, and nowhere else. You can support this podcast financially by donating to Radical Russ on Venmo, Rad Russ on Cash App, or via PayPal on my website at radicalruss.com. Get this podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, my website, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and until next week, take care of each other.
You roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it.